Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Laura Miller and I make videos about programming. In this video, we'll start discussing control flow in JavaScript. We'll go through if and switch statements, and we'll see the main use cases for each of them. Let's switch Notion and let's get started. There are two constructs we will discuss in this conditional statements part. The first one is the classic if-else statement, and the second one is the switch statement. New file here, and we are going to call this if.js. Now, if statements are quite straightforward to understand. Their syntax is that we have some condition here, right? If condition, execute, if boolean of condition strictly equals true, else execute if boolean of condition strictly equals false. So in other words, if the condition is truthy, then we're going to execute this block of code. Otherwise, we're going to execute this block of code. So let's write a couple of truthy values and falsy values. So falsy val 1, that's going to be, let's say, false. Ta-da. No big surprises here. Falsy value 2, this is going to be, let's say, an empty string. And then falsy value 3, this can be undefined, for example. And then we have a couple of truthy values, and that's going to be truthy value 1. This is going to be a non-zero number. Then truthy value 2, maybe like this is faster. This is going to be an empty object. We can also have truthy value 3 with an empty array. And we can also have truthy value 4 with just the symbol primitive. Now, if we were to have a simple function that, let's say, print truthy, or let's say print, just print, and then we receive a value here, and then we say if value, then console.log, I am truthy, else console.log, I am falsy. Oops, falsy. And then I have a couple of function calls, so a couple of print function calls for falsy value 1. And now I'm just going to do a bit of copy and paste here. Falsy value 2, 3, and then we have truthy value 1, and then truthy value 2 and 3. And it shouldn't come as a big surprise that if we come here to the console and we run node if.js, we get I am falsy, 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 and then I am truthy, truthy, truthy. So that's the basics of if statements, really not much more to discuss. Of course, you can also chain a couple of if statements. So let's take an example here. If type of val equals object, we're going to say, object, we will simply console log. We're going to say console log I am an object. Else if type of value equals function, we will console log I am a function. Else we will simply console log I am a primitive value, like so, right? So now we can actually, let's switch this, well, this one we didn't use here, but let's switch the truthy value number 3 to actually be a function, or we could even use the traditional method to define a function, truthy val 3, and this is just going to be an empty function. We don't need this to do anything for the moment. That's fine for us. If I save this, we should see falsy, falsy, falsy. And then, well, this ones we can actually erase because we know the result. So we should see, for the first one, we should see I am a primitive value. For the second one, we should see I am an object. And for the third one, we should see I am a function. If I save this and I run, then that's exactly what we get. I'm a primitive value, I'm an object, and I'm a function. That's it for if-else statements, and because we are already very familiar with this notion of truthy and falsy values, then it becomes quite easy to understand the mechanics of this if-else statement. So let's discuss switch statements. Let's switch back here to the, no pun intended, but let's switch here back to the IDE, switch.js. And switch is really the syntax. It works that we are going to switch a certain value, and then we are going to have a bunch of checks, right? So a bunch of cases. We can have case, in case the value is equal to, or let's say in case value 1, then we will execute some code, In case, then we have here case value 2, then we're going to execute some other code, execute some more code or some other code here, some code, and then we can have as many cases as we want. And then in the end, we have a default case, and the default case is going to be executed if no case was a match, right? So we are going to switch a certain value, let's say a number or a string, for example, and we are going to check, okay, if the number is 0, then execute something. If the number is 1, execute something else, and so on and so on. If the number is none of the above, execute the default case. If there is no default case, the switch statement will just do nothing, right? So we can actually, let's say, declare again a function print, and our function is going to receive a value, and we are going to say switch my value, and here I'm going to pass the value as a parameter so that we can actually switch its value, and we'll say case 1 print, or console.log, sorry, console.log January. Let's say that we actually, let's say print month, right? So here we would receive the month number, and we will say switch month number, case 1 console.log January. Well, here I'm not really trying to get any parallels with the date object. For the date object, months start at 0, so we would call January as 0, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember that exactly, but I think that's the case. So we can also have another case here, case 2 console.log February, February, case 3 console.log March, and then here I will not write everything, okay, so don't worry about it. Let's just put a default case, console.log none of the above, okay, none of the above. And if I actually look carefully here at my IDE, you will see that I'm actually getting some warnings, right? And this we will explore in a bit. But for a switch statement, once a certain case is actually matched, so once we match a certain case, it is going to start the execution at this point, and it will continue the execution, which means that if I were to simply say print month with 1, this is going to print January, or console January, February, March, and none of the above. Let's save this and let's see how this works, or how this looks like in the console. Now you see that it prints everything, and that's because the case statement is not, it does not create a limitation, so the execution does not stop when we reach the next case. It actually represents more of a starting point, and then it will continue to execute until we reach a break statement or until we reach a return statement. Okay, of course, for the default, it doesn't make sense for us to add a break here because it's already the last one in the list. But we could also say return here. That's also fine. It's no problem. Once I have the break, now it's going to output only January. And that's exactly what we want to achieve. So this is the general structure of a switch statement. Also, we can have multiple cases that are going to output, or that are going to lead to the same command being executed. So now I have case 1, 2, 3. This we could say first quarter or something, and quarter. And then here maybe I can just go ahead and copy for the second quarter. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that would be second quarter. And then we say none of the above, and then here we could try to print month number 4, and we print second quarter, right? So we can also have multiple case statements stacked together, and then this would represent, okay, if the number is 1 or 2 or 3, then console.log first quarter. If the number is 4 or 5 or 6, console.log second quarter. If the number is none of the above, just console.log none of the above. Well, that's actually it. Not much more apart from that. I mean, I would say that for switch statements, my recommendation is to actually stick to having cases that actually represent values rather than Boolean conditions. So if we were to write something like this, while the code is not going to complain about it, it's really confusing. I mean, if I pass number 4 and I'm switching I'm switching the value month number, what does this case actually mean? It's confusing, it's hard to understand, and I would discourage using such a construct. You can use if statements in these cases because it becomes much cleaner and much more explicit, much more direct what you actually mean. So you can also use strings, that's also fine. 1, 2, 3, and of course here then I would have to pass my number as a string, right? So if I were to try to run something like this, I would not be successful because then it's going to print just none of the above because I am passing an actual number. So if I pass the string value here and I save this, then now it should print the second factor. So the case and switch statement also works with strings, is no problem, but my recommendation in general is for you to use a specific value when actually checking for the different cases in switch statements. That's it for this video. Quick introduction to if and switch statements. I know they are relatively simple, there is not much to explore, not too many different cases, but it's very important for us to know and get a very good understanding of them. In the next video, we will cover the second part of this control flow structures and we will talk about loops. And if you don't want to miss that, as always, subscribe to the channel and you'll get a notification when the video is out. Just a quick reminder, in the description of the video there is a link to an online environment where you can practice everything we discussed today. Thanks for your time and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.